Yeah, hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. As usual, I'm Naoli Joel, going to take you through a new concept known as the secondary sources. This is under the information sources, and I think previously you saw I spoke about the primary sources. So today I'm speaking about the secondary sources specifically. So the secondary sources, as usual, I told you, is the first person to get the information from the primary source. That one becomes our secondary source. I'll go straight first. Let me first go through the examples of these primary and secondary sources. Examples of these secondary sources include the journal articles, the books, the documentaries, the encyclopedias, and the essays and reviews. When I speak about the books here specifically, I'm looking at the history books, analyzing a specific historical period or events. For example, you look, some books speak about the Bushmen, but they were not there during the time of the Bushmen, but the author just writes the information based on what he got. So those historical books become the secondary sources. Then some journal articles include some articles that critique or analyze primary data, such as a research paper on let us say on analyzing the results of scientific experiments. That one becomes a journal, and is an article about that becomes a secondary source. Then some documentaries, of course, those are like films or videos that tell the story of historical events. For example, you find someone playing a movie basing on true stories, meaning he wasn't there, but he read a story, or he was told a story by the old parents or the grandmas or the grandpas by that time who were there. Then they try to act. That will also has become the secondary sources of the information. The essays and the reviews, those are also examples of the secondary information. Specifically here now, let me talk about the characteristics of the secondary sources of the information. For example, these secondary sources of information are characterized in specifically 4 ways. That's the interpretative, the evaluative, the summary, and the contextual. These are some of the characters common with secondary sources. They cut across all secondary sources in a way that if I say they are interpretative, meaning that the secondary sources involve some level of analyzing, synthesizing, and evaluation of primary sources. Meaning, when you receive the information from the primary source, for example, you have ever seen these news reporters trying to interrogate someone, or even police officers trying to interrogate someone who was present at the crime. They try to ask him to, in the process of they are analyzing, they are trying to critique, they are trying to understand the information and interpret it into, and is a website that they can break it down into a layman's language, or a language that is easily understood. If I say evaluative, these secondary sources, they are evaluative in the way that they offer opinions or assessments based on the evidence that may be drawn from the primary source. Meaning, when the primary source gives you, like, for example, let us say I was standing on the left, then they say, oh, if you're standing on the left, meaning the car came from the right, or if you're standing on the left, meaning the bird came flying from the right. Meaning, they try to give those opinions about or assessments based on the evidence someone is trying to give. You have ever seen this with FBIs? They are common, that in the way of giving those opinions about the evidence someone is giving who was present at the scene. If I speak about summary, meaning these primary secondary sources summarize the information, often to explain a concept or to connect the various primary source. Meaning, if the primary source tries to give something, like, for example, can I say the primary source gives you the information, you try to summarize. Remember, primary sources, they tend to be too lengthy, they want to explain everything that was there, but the secondary source, you try to summarize it down and break it down so that the meaning remains the same, but it is summarized. It's not too lengthy, or it is not too long, the way the primary source was being given, so they tend to summarize them. Then if I say it is contextual here, I'm trying to mean that the secondary source help to frame or contextualize. Wow, I like this English. Or to contextualize primary data within broader trends or movements and histories. So that's the meaning of contextual, if I say that. So let me try to look at some, can I say, let us look at some purposes of these secondary sources. I try to summarize them in some layman's language, in the way that is easy for us to understand, that is contextualize, interpretation, and analysis, broader understanding. Those are some of the purposes. Whereby now, if I say it is contextualize, meaning here I'm trying to say that the secondary sources provide the necessary context for primary data. They synthesize information after a wider understanding of a particular event. So if I say it is interpretation and analysis, here I'm trying to say that they help researchers, especially researchers need this. If I say it is interpretation, it's interpretation and analysis, I'm trying to mean that it helps researchers to make sense of primary materials by providing, let us say, providing expert commentaries and comparative analysis. They try to comment on the primary sources on the primary sources of the information. That's what we call by analyzing. Through commenting, they are trying to analyze and interpret the primary sources of the information. Then if I say it is broader understanding, it provides a broader understanding in the way that secondary sources help in specific events or pieces of data within a larger society or cultural events, for example, or providing a full picture about a particular event or information. That's some of the purposes. So these secondary sources also have some roles and of the secondary sources. Some of the roles there that they support or critique the use of primary sources. Meaning the primary sources might be giving some stuff, but they are not clear. For example, let us say someone made a research about polio, and if you made the research about polio, there's some after you analyzing, the secondary source analyzing, the primary source developed the idea and made the research about polio and gave and presented this document. But for you, the secondary source, after analyzing, you realize that there's something you're not understanding, meaning you'll have to critique or you have to critique the primary source and make more research. If not, if you are in occurrence or you accepting what he gave, meaning you will have to support what the primary source gave. If now the other role is interpret the primary data. The primary sources, the secondary sources, they tend to get information from the primary data and try to interpret it and make it understandable. Remember, the primary sources are raw data. Then these secondary sources will tend to interpret the primary sources so that they make it meaningful. Then guide researchers in framing their own questions. Automatically the secondary source will guide researchers. Like if you get this knowledge, will guide the researcher in framing their own question. For example, after a certain research, you'll have to question and have some critiques. Let me now speak about the pros and the cons of these secondary sources. The pros and the cons here, I will speak specifically on the pros are meaning advantages, the cons are meaning disadvantages. So the pros, these are the advantages, and some of the advantages that they provide critical analysis and comprehensive overview. They also connect the dots between different pieces of primary evidences, meaning the primary source of the information may be like in bits. This one saw something, also another one saw something, another one also saw something. All of them are primary sources because they saw during the event. But now realize that they will connect the dots between all of them and make them complete, so that they become all primary, manya meaningful information. So that's the importance of the advantage of the secondary sources of the information. It is easier to access and understand than the raw primary data in the way that it is now meaningful, since the secondary sources has analyzed it and interpreted it. The disadvantage, which are the cons, is that they can introduce misinterpretation in a way that someone might be speaking about something else, then you misinterpret him or you misquote the primary source since you are the secondary source. By the time the information moves from the primary source and reaches the secondary source, then it goes to another, meaning its value is lowering and its accuracy is also lowering. They are second-hand accounts, so they lack immediacy and the authenticity of the primary source. I think that's clear, more clearer. So as I conclude, as As I conclude, I would like to say that secondary sources interpret and analyze the primary sources. That's what you have to know in this video, offering a broader context, critique, or synthesis of the information. They are indispensable for a robust and nuanced understanding, and researchers use this in tandem and support their works. I think this is well clear and well. Thank you for watching. Love you all. Please subscribe if you haven't yet, and please hit the notification bell if you haven't yet, so that you stay updated. Thank you for watching. Love you all. Bye bye.